Well, good morning, folks, and welcome back to the farm. I haven't even eaten my breakfast here this morning. I looked out of our kitchen window and I saw something in the electric netting. So we got this electric netting set up to keep sheep in on our lawn. They're grazing on the lawn. I saw something in the netting and it looked like a chicken. But now that I've got all the way out here, it looks like a piece of garbage. So I might have just wasted my own time, including yours. But nevertheless, we'll run out, check the fence, make sure it's still working, and make sure nothing's grounding it out. Even if it is, definitely looks like garbage now. What a waste of time that was. Good start to the day, right? So you can see how from a very long way away, this could easily be confused as a chicken stuck in the electric fence. But in fact, it is a box from the potatoes that we harvested yesterday. I left these sitting under a rock in each row so I knew which type of potatoes we were harvesting, and evidently it got picked up by the wind and blown against the fence. So now I guess we better go for breakfast. Good job. Charlotte, did you have breakfast?
Mm-hmm.
What did you have?
I cooked my breakfast.
You cooked your breakfast?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we already had our breakfast. Homegrown right here off the farm, bacon and eggs, homegrown pork, home-raised eggs right from these chickens right here. So absolutely thankful for that. And you know, why is that so relevant nowadays? Well, I think there's a real disconnect for a majority of the population as to where food really originates from. And why is that? Why is that? Well, in fact, only 1.7% of the Canadian population are farmers. So what does that mean? What does that mean? That means, well, in a room full of 60 people, only one of them is a farmer, right? So every farmer needs to feed 59 other people. Whereas, if you look back 50 years ago, that was closer to 1 in 20. So a vast explosion of population growth, as well as a major change in how food is brought from where it's raised to where it's consumed. So now there's more factory farming, industrial processing of foods. And I was reading an article here this morning from the Western Producer about some folks in Lethbridge. Lethbridge is a rural farming community, and there's some people there were really bent out of shape because of grasshoppers. So Lethbridge being a rural farming community would not be all that strange to see, mid-season, a lot of the grain farmers in the area to be spraying some insecticide. Now, there was lots of folks complained about that in past years, but this year crops failed very early on, and so the farmers basically said, well, why would I spray insecticide when there's nothing there for the insects to eat? So grasshoppers moved in, and as you can imagine, when they run out of food, Ranger quit being a big jerk. The grasshoppers move in, they got nothing to eat. Now they're going to move into suburbia and get after people's gardens. So all these people living in these fancy suburbs in these $500,000 houses, well, they spent all this money, creating these gardens, which I'll get into in a later conversation about how people try to control their environment within their gardens. But so they spent all this money on these gardens. The grasshoppers, they come in, clean out what's left of the farmer's field, which there's not much there. And then needless to say, they move right into the suburbs, which are completely adjacent to or within existing farmland. And they just clean house, right? So then one lady actually wrote to her city council in Lethbridge and complained and said that, it affected her mental health and the mental health of her children because they couldn't enjoy their backyard because it got eaten by grasshoppers. And as such, she felt it was necessary that city council hold the farmer who is adjacent to her property accountable in some way for damages because he walked away from the field. He just, it didn't grow, so he didn't spray. Therefore, the grasshoppers came in and ate this lady's shrubbery. Boy, what a world we live in, hey? Like, talk about a sense of entitlement. So how does this happen? Well, it happens because 40,000 to 50,000 acres on average of existing farmland is taken over every year and turned into either residential or commercial property. And you know what? I don't blame the farmer for selling their property, because there's no way that farming can pay for it by comparison to selling it off as residential lots. You'll never in a lifetime make that kind of money. And with the prices of grain and prices of fuel, prices of cattle, everything where it's at, you're either buying it too expensive and selling for too cheap, or you're just straight up going bankrupt, right? There's not a lot of money in farming right now. So in fact, there's very few people in the world, except for maybe the 1.7% of the population, that are really at any point accountable for where food comes from for the vast majority of the population. Nobody really puts a lot of thought into where's my next meal coming from, or where's the meal next week coming from, or where's the meal this winter coming from, except for very, very few individuals. Now, even something as simple as keeping a few backyard chickens, surprisingly, in a lot of municipalities, keeping a couple hens and being able to raise either your own meat chickens or have your own eggs for your own consumption, mind you, not even for sales, but just for your own consumption, is prohibited. So when entire communities say, you know what, no, you can't grow your own food, there's something wrong with the world we live in. And so that discourages a lot of other people from really getting into it. Now, vegetable gardens, there's a lot of people, I don't know why, but are hesitant to get into growing their own vegetables. And they're literally the easiest thing in the world to do. You see, we had some fails last year with potatoes, but aside from that, some really good vegetables come out of our garden. This year, we've had amazing luck with our vegetables. We've had really good luck with growing weeds too, but well, what do we do with all the weeds? We feed them to our pigs, right? So it's all a full cycle, and we're able to supply a huge percentage of our own diet just off of the food that we raise and grow right here on the farm. But one of the questions that often comes up is, and I see this just about every day, people asking, where's the best place to start your homestead? Well, you could pretty much homestead anywhere. Really, you could. You could homestead in Antarctica if you really wanted to. It would all depend on what's important to you, what your priorities are, what it is you want to. The homestead doesn't mean always growing your own food. Homesteading is really it's taking raw land and forming some system of self-sufficiency off of that raw land. So, like I said, if you want to live in an igloo and hunt seal, well, you can homestead in Antarctica if you really wanted to. But the point, moreover, is that you really have to determine what's important to yourself, and then start looking at individual communities that have, the type of climate that would support what it is you're trying to do, and then look at their local municipal bylaws and regulations, and things like land use bylaw, animal bylaws, things like that, to determine not only what type of animals you can keep, but how many of those animals you can keep. You also need to do things like soil sampling. Maybe you're not going to do lab samples. Maybe you're just going to ask around and see what type of soil types there are. But you should still have a really good idea of what soil types are there. And again, will they support the type of homesteading activity that you want to do? Some people are looking for forested land. Some people are looking for open land. Some people are looking for land with a water source. So the area specific, in our region alone, we could have all of these things, right? From temperate climates to frigid climates, to forested area, to open area, to wetlands, to mountainous areas can exist within a 200 kilometer radius, just within, like I said, our region. So to say specifically where's the best place to homestead is again really going to come down to the specific things that are important to you, and the regulations within each community that will support you actually carrying out those type of activities. Now, if you're looking for a community that has a bylaw that says you can keep chickens, you'll probably have better luck finding a community that doesn't have a bylaw saying you can't keep chickens. Sometimes you're better off to work inside the gray area, inside the blind spot. And if you're respectful and professional with the way in which you keep your animals, the way in which you maintain your land, if you're a good steward, you don't bother your neighbors, well, then chances are the municipality isn't going to interfere in what you're doing. Now, say you found somewhere where you want to set up and you want to have your own chicken house just like this, keep your chickens in your backyard. When I talk about being respectful and professional with your neighbors so that nobody rats you out, or nobody complains, I should say, about what you're doing, there's two things to keep in mind. Now, one, you can probably hear in the background, chickens do make noise. They don't make a ton of noise, but I mean, I'm here in the chicken house, they're laying eggs, they're gonna cluck, right? If you had a rooster, that's 10 times worse. There's nothing your neighbors hate more than the sound of a rooster at 5 o'clock in the morning. So you can imagine if you had to listen to that all the time as a neighbor who didn't own chickens, who doesn't like chickens, how annoying that could get to be. Now, the second thing they're going to complain about is all of this. The smell. Chickens, by their very nature, are terribly, terribly stinky. Now, our chicken house, believe it or not, is immediately upwind of our house. And yet we don't have any stink from our chicken house. How do we manage that? Well, we manage it with deep litter. So this is all pine shavings and chicken manure. So basically creating a carbon to nitrogen balance that takes the odor completely out of it. With the deep litter method, I find there's a lot of people that message me late December, January, into February, when you really get the cold spells in the year and the deep litter is supposed to be heating your chicken house. And they say, this isn't working, what am I doing wrong? Or this is just junk, it's all an old wives' tale. It's not feasible, it doesn't work for me. And honestly, the number one question I always ask those people is, when did you start preparing your deep litter and what did you add to it? So this time of year, we're end of August, coming into beginning of September here in a couple of days. And if you don't already have your deep litter prepped, you are behind the 8 ball. This is something you want to start early on in the summer, just with simple blanket of wood shavings, and let the chickens poop on it. Keep it turned over, keep it dry, add whatever more wood shavings you need just to maintain a low humidity level on the floor of your chicken house, and let that microbial activity start to work. You're not going to see heat generation if you're keeping it dry, right? You're just going to keep it in a neutral phase, keep it odor free. Now when you get into the wet season and the snowy season, then you're going to start to see things start to pick up and heat up. And that's when it's going to work for you. But if you're putting dry wood shavings into your coop in November or December and expecting that chicken poop that freezes the minute it hits the cold chicken house floor to actually generate any kind of heat or microbial activity, I'm sorry, but it's just not going to work. This is something you have to get started on well ahead of time. Now, think about this like canning some of the stuff that you're getting out of your garden, right? When do you buy your jars? Well, do you buy your jars in August and September? No, because you're not going to find them, right? The reality is you're probably going to try and find that stuff in May and June. The minute it hits the shelf, get it and get it working for you, right? It's the same with any aspect of farming, is you're going to want to be a couple of months ahead for most of everything. So if you're using the deep litter method, or you're planning to use the deep litter method this winter, what kind of temperature can you expect to see if this is working and fully functional? Well, last winter, when it was minus 50 degrees Celsius outside, we saw temperatures, and I apologize now for the Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion. You'll have to do the math on this yourself because the meat thermometer was only in Fahrenheit. But we saw temperatures of 160 Fahrenheit inside the compost pile that was in that chicken house. When it's minus 50 degrees Celsius outside, it's minus 10 inside the chicken house. So there's a 40 degree Celsius temperature increase from outside to inside just by having fully functioning deep litter working for you, generating heat, lots of microbial activity, chickens turning it over, no less. I don't really have to, initially you've got to turn it over and rotate it. Now when it gets deep into winter, you pretty much just got to stoke it up every 2 weeks, maybe every 10 days kind of thing, and let the chickens stir it up after that. And you can generate an incredible amount of heat. This chicken house is an old grain bin, right? It's rickety, It's I mean, it's insulated with sheep wool, and I mean, just look at the old tin roof that's on this thing. This is certainly, you know, not one of these like super sealed up, built to code kind of things. This is just an old repurposed farm building, and we can see a 40 degrees Celsius temperature differential just from having good, effective deep litter in the chicken house. So now in the spring, when you clean out the chicken house, because I mean all that material that you're adding to that deep litter, we were in some spots 4 feet deep in our chicken house, right? In other spots, I think we're about 18 inches, but there's quite a bit of material that builds up in there over the course of the winter. What do you do with it all afterwards? So we actually have this hollow spot right here that runs through the yard. This is actually where we run the water line out, and it just sunk because the soil never got compacted properly here. So we actually put compost in here. So we either take straw and manure from the bull's bedding ground, or we actually take the stuff out of the chicken house and we put it here, and the dog digs through it, the cats dig through it, the chickens dig through it, and it makes this beautiful, beautiful rich compost here that we can top dress our garden beds with, and it's absolutely amazing stuff. Well, the day kind of got away on me, and it's way past 9:30. And that's kind of my rule for shutting her down. But it's closer to 11:30 now, and I still haven't had a cup of tea. But if anybody has any questions about deep litter bedding, keeping backyard chickens, creating a more sustainable food chain, shoot us a message in the comments, shoot us an email, send a message to our Facebook page, whichever works best for you. But for now, I'm going to go get that cup of tea. So I'll let you go for now. I hope you have a fantastic evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.